Okay, let's be real. Growing up as a Black girl who doesn't quite fit the mold, it's a whole different experience. If I had $1 for every time someone called me an Oreo because I wasn't the stereotypical Black girl, I would be living my best life in like the most expensive condo in Shibuya, Tokyo right now. But the thing is, it's not just about being called names. It's about how people think we're only allowed to like certain things, or we're only allowed to be a certain type of person or act a certain way. And they put us into this tiny little box. And if you step outside that box, suddenly you're too different or you're not Black enough. Today, we're going to break all of that down. Okay, so here's the thing. If you're a Black girl, especially a dark-skinned Black girl, there are these like invisible rules that you're supposed to follow from day one. And I'm talking about rules that nobody really talks about, but you feel them the second you step out of line. You want to listen to rock music? That's white people music. You want to watch anime? That's you're trying to be Asian. And let's say you just get into K-pop. Now you got people really confused. They're like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? It's actually so exhausting. The way that we are held to a completely different standard than everybody else. It's like society already decided what we're allowed to like, how we're supposed to act, and who we get to be. You're not allowed to be a nerd. You can't be the one quoting Naruto or like Attack on Titan.
My soldiers scream out! My soldiers rage!
They've got this narrow view of Blackness, and if you step outside of that, suddenly you're not Black enough.
This can't be. It says I'm 102% African. Why, Lord? Why, Lord? Why?
And God forbid you're quiet or introverted. Then they've got a whole other list of stereotypes to throw at you. Let's keep it real. White kids get to explore. They get to be weird. They get to try new things. They get to figure out what their interests are. They get to dabble and dip their toes into all different genres and, different hobbies. Listen, they can explore guns and nobody looks at them sideways. Still to this day. They can listen to whatever music they like, join any fandom, and it's just quirky or even cool. But as a Black girl, if you're listening to things or engaging in things that people don't really see for you, you're automatically seen as weird. Like if you listen to rock music, or if you like anime, or if you're so passionate about fantasy novels, boom, labeled the Oreo. Boom, you're seen as not being Black enough, or you're trying to be white, or you're trying to be this and that, accept everything that you are. But honestly though, it's a lot deeper than the music that we listen to or the shows that we like. Black girls are expected to perform Blackness in a very specific way. Society expects you to be loud, tough, and hyper confident all the time. And if you don't fit that stereotype, suddenly again, you're not Black enough, or even worse, you're seen as less worthy because you're not performing what people think Blackness should be.
Submissive, sexy, sassy. 3 stereotypes of Black women that return to our screens over and over again.
So in this video, I actually want to talk about a multitude of different things. I want to talk about the erasure of Black women in fandoms, the cognitive dissonance of Black nerds, why this matters, and breaking the monolith of Blackness, growing up introverted, the impact of this sort of narrative on relationships, the wider implications of why this essentially strips away youthhood and authenticity, the professional consequences, and why all of this matters. Okay, so speaking of Oreos, let's dive straight into the erasure of Black women in fandom cultures. It really does not help that Black women are constantly erased from the fandom cultures that we are a part of and sometimes even created. Black women have always been active in fandoms, whether it's anime, scenes, sci-fi, K-pop, fantasy, comic books. But when people talk about what a nerd looks like, I'm gonna be real with you, they're not thinking of Black women. I was reading this article and I'm gonna link it here because everything that they mention in this article is absolutely spot on. I'm gonna look at my notes and read it here, but it says, as Professor Rebecca Wanzo points out, there have always been rich cultures of Black fandoms, but we're not counted in the conversations. When people picture nerds, they don't picture Black girls or Black women. They assume the average nerd is some white guy with glasses who's socially awkward but passionate. But where are the conversations about us? Outside of being labeled an Oreo, like at the very least, you think we'd be included in these spaces and in these conversations. Where are the spaces where Black girls and Black women who like these things actually get acknowledged? Outside of the Black fandom spaces that we essentially had to create because we were kicked out of the main spaces.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man.
We're not seen, respected, or acknowledged as equals. We're always here, but we still get ignored and dismissed. And the thing is, like, it's not just about being, again, labeled an Oreo or being ignored. It's about how Black girls who are outside of that mold or outside of that stereotype really shake and shatter the stereotypes that we're all just one monolith. In reference to that article, Adam Bradley wrote in the New York Times, Black nerds create something that's called cognitive dissonance. Basically, we confuse people. The American imagination has always stereotyped Black women and Black people in general as just being uneducated, emotional, or hypersexualized. So when a Black girl shows up as a nerd, smart, maybe not sexy, unapologetically uncool, people are not feeling it. They do not give us the same grace that they would give somebody else. We break the stereotype. We don't fit in the boxes. We don't fit in the molds that they have created for us. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. A Black girl who is different than the image that they have created and are trying to project onto us essentially challenges the racist one-dimensional version of Blackness that they have been fed. And it's crazy because it's like, we are human beings. Like, we are allowed to be multidimensional. And there's literally nothing wrong if you do fit that stereotype or that trope that is placed on Black women. You are allowed to do that. You're also allowed to live outside of those stereotypes and be different than what people expect you to be. This is why it's important to talk about this. Black women who are different or are labeled an Oreo really challenge the myth of monolithic Blackness. We are not all the same. We don't all like the same things. And we are tired of being erased from spaces, whether it's online or in person, that we helped build. I said it.
Yup.
We have always been there, and we're always going to be there. But society is always trying to make us feel like we don't belong, and that stems from childhood. All right, so let's talk about being a Black girl who grew up introverted and is still introverted. I know some of you guys are already nodding. You already understand what I'm about to say. That is a different kind of struggle. I just feel like people have this expectation that Black girls are supposed to be charismatic and outgoing and confident and loud and rambunctious. Like, you are supposed to be the life of the party. You are supposed to be the one that's the most confident. But if you're not that, if you don't meet those, stereotypes or expectations, people get so confused. They're like, why is she so quiet? And then instead of thinking like, oh, maybe she's just introverted or maybe she's just naturally quiet, immediately goes to, oh, maybe she doesn't like us, or maybe she's rude. Maybe she thinks she's better than us. And it's like, why would your mind go there? People can't even sit in silence. They can't even observe, mind their own business without other people automatically assuming that they're doing it because they are rude. And I feel like the unfortunate part is that being an introverted Black girl doesn't just mean that you are different in social spaces, but it also can limit your opportunities. For example, in job interviews, unfortunately, there's like already so much research about bias in interviews and like bias against Black women and then bias against darker skinned Black women versus lighter skinned Black women. It's just a cesspool of racism on top of racism, on top of colorism, on top of texturism. And then to be introverted on top of that, you are fighting an uphill battle. And unfortunately, if you're not performing the way that people expect you to, immediately denied opportunities. And in practical terms, like, if you come across as soft-spoken or reserved in interviews, they automatically assume that you're not capable and you're not confident. Like, excuse me for not putting on a whole TED Talk during an interview. Like, you asked me what my skills were. You didn't ask me to put on a Broadway show. And yet, that's what they're expecting. I want to tie it back to the professional consequences of, again, just being the Oreo or being the introverted Black girl or whatever the case is, and how that impacts your professional opportunities. The way that people see your quietness or just the way that you present yourself and immediately imply that as this person would not do well in leadership opportunities. Meanwhile, we've already seen a lot of studies about how introverts are some of the best leaders, but I digress. Or it's like situations where Black women don't get hired because they weren't social enough during the interviews. Our competence gets dismissed because we're not performing the way society expects.
She's a high performer. A strong Black woman has likely had to outperform her mostly white and or male peers in order to get where she is.
Twice as good as them to get half of what they have.
It's like there's no room for us anywhere to just be ourselves, whether that's in fandom spaces, throughout our childhood, or even as we grow up and are seeking jobs in the job market. And honestly, it's even deeper than that because as a Black woman, automatically labeled rude or, standoffish just because you're not performing Black girl magic on command. If you're not constantly giving off big energy or if you come across as different, people automatically assume there is something wrong with you. You get passed over for opportunities, promotions, and even friendships just because you're not extroverted enough. With that being said, I actually also wanted to talk about the impacts on relationships, but I don't want to delve too much into it because I feel like there's already a lot of conversation online about being a Black woman navigating the dating space. Just to sum it all up, this just ties into the stereotype of being hypersexual. If you don't give off that exact persona that people have created in their head, again, you're labeled as too reserved or too shy. People expect these big, bold personalities 100% of the time, which again, there's nothing wrong with having a big, bold personality. But if you're not, suddenly you're too boring or you're a prude or you're not fun enough. And honestly, this can destroy someone's self-esteem. I often worry about just the younger generation of Black women growing up with the increase of these digital platforms constantly telling Black women you have to be like this and you have to do like that and you have to perform and you have to do this to get a rich man. And I get worried about, impressionable young Black girls who feel like they have to do this, this, and that just to get a man and they have to change themselves. And it's honestly scary. All of these things can really destroy a young Black girl or a Black woman's self-esteem. And you start to think am I not enough? Should I be doing more? Am I supposed to perform some version of myself just so that I can fit in? It is exhausting, especially when you're constantly being made to feel like there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you for having different interests. There's something wrong with you for being quiet or introverted. There's something wrong with you because you are not confident 100% of the time and performing for other people. It's tiring. We can't even catch a break. You can't even be quiet and catch a break. And honestly, I feel like this ties into the wider implications of how this impacts authenticity, but also youthhood. This whole pressure to be loud and outgoing and to be mature really, really impacts young Black girls. And it plays into how young Black girls are treated in general. From a young age, we're not really allowed to be kids. People look at us and expect us to be fully grown at the age of 12. We get hypersexualized, adultified, and forced into these stereotypes that essentially strip away our childhood. People want us to be this one-dimensional version of Black womanhood. And if we're quiet, introverted, or even just not interested in being loud and bold 24/7, you get judged, sidelined, or even mistreated. And honestly, I feel like part of the problem is the lack of representation. We just don't see Black women in the media who parallel a lot of the young Black girls today. You can't go on TV and watch Brandy or Kyla Pratt on One or Raven and That's So Raven. We just don't see that. Everyone nowadays has to be racially ambiguous or a lighter complexion or biracial. And that is our representation of a Black woman. We don't really see the complex nature of Black women in the media anymore. We don't really see the Black nerd or the Black athlete or just a variety of, characteristics or personalities of young Black girls or Black women. We just don't see Black girls, period. Just being girls. We don't see that. Now she's got to be racially ambiguous to be relatable. And I'm not really loving this agenda. I feel like because of this, I watch less and less TV and movies because I'm not even going to see anybody who looks like me. I'm not even going to see multi-dimensional characters. Everything is the same. I'm just going to see another Zendaya dupe in the TV screen. I'm just not interested. You're honestly lucky if you see a Black girl who looks like your cousin on screen. And if she's quirky or alternative, forget about it. I feel like it's just down to a few Black girls right now and Black women who are trying to create more representation for us and trying to show these characters on screen. But the fact that it's so limited is so disappointing. And I know that has real world effects into how people perceive Black girls. You basically have to create that representation yourself at this point. But anyways, I say all that to say there is literally nothing wrong with being different or liking different things. It doesn't matter if you are into the whole emo scene, or if you like Tide Pop, or if you're into skateboarding, whatever the case is, like, just do you. I understand that it's going to be very discouraging dealing with people who are constantly on your neck meat, telling you that, you know, you're weird, you're different, you're trying too hard, you're trying to be this race or that race. But literally, this is your own life. You have to make sure that it's one that you live authentically. All of these things and all of these interests that you have is what makes you interesting. When you're trying so hard to copy this mold or to be someone that you're not, the only person that you're hurting in this process is yourself. All my fellow Black girls who've been called an Oreo or weird or anything of that nature, just because you didn't fit in the box, that box is boring. At this point, just build your own box. You deserve to love what you love and be the person that you are without judgment. I just finished Kaiju number 8. Chef's kiss. Amazing. 10 out of 10. But if you guys have any recommendations of shows I could watch, please feel free to leave them in the comments below because I have nothing else to do. So if you're feeling this video, or if you're a Black girl who's been called out for not being Black enough, drop a comment below. Tell me your experiences. How do you deal with this? What's your advice? I would love to know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching yet another video of me yapping in my bedroom. Yeah, and if you have any good anime recommendations, please let me know. I'm so serious. Thank you. Bye-bye.